Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to week one of our nutritional counseling program. So, this week is leaning into the first segment of the 12 weeks. And if you remember, the 12 weeks are broken down like this. We're going to start with the nutrition as a science. So, we're going to talk a lot about the difference between pseudoscience, actual science, do it yourself meal plans, and setting small goals for yourself, or if you're a personal trainer or holistic nutritionist watching this, for your clients. Each week, you'll be given some sort of homework accountability. And with that, usually comes a check in with me. So if you have any questions, make sure you write them down or put them in an email so that we can parking lot them until our next session and we can go through them one on one. Now, my intention for each week is to take you through one component of the big three being thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, because that's where you have true change. And I do this because they all interact with each other. So thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Now, most of the time, what we do in personal training and nutrition and food is behavior change. So we focus a lot talking about the behavior and saying, okay, what can we do to change this? Do we replace a habit with a habit? And how long is that actually going to stick? With that first segment of our first 4 weeks, we're also going to transition a little bit into fad dieting and what happens when behavior change fails or replacing that habit with a habit fails. And how does it impact our thoughts and our emotions moving forward? In the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking about body image, all about body image, a lot about social media, a lot about how diets and how fitness changes the way we think about our body, how society changes the way we think, and then how the way we think impacts our behaviors and how that impacts us emotionally as well. So again, thoughts, emotions, behaviors. Then in the last 4 weeks, it's all about overcoming self-sabotage and moving forward. So let's dive in. Our first week, we're going to do an introduction on nutrition. Okay. So depending on where you're coming from, you may have just a beginner's knowledge. You may have what we call food literacy, but I really want to enhance you up to nutrition literacy by the time these 4 weeks are done, which can be a challenge. So each week I say this, if you already know the information or it's not something you need right now, that's okay. Let it go. Take with you what you want. I am a very passionate speaker, so I put a lot of information into a condensed amount of time. So the best way my students have found to work with me as your teacher is to have a piece of pen and paper out and jot down notes and just listen as you go. The benefit of getting this recorded as well is the ability to stop, rewind, and play it again, because I do pack a lot of information in there. Let's touch base on that food literacy versus nutrition literacy. Now, food literacy, nobody ever comes to me with, actually, very rarely do people come to me with food literacy questions. Food literacy is the basic knowledge of nutrition. This is, I know what foods are more nourishing. I know what foods are less nourishing. I know the basics of cooking. I know that vegetables are healthy, right? So these are kind of like the building blocks of nutrition. Now, nutrition literacy enhances that into application, right? So this is, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing and I know the benefits of it. And I continue to do it because I already have food literacy. Now I'm actually living it. And we're going to enhance you from that food literacy into that nutrition literacy, where it becomes second nature. So the biggest thing in every single application in every single week, and why we do these 12 weeks, is to take the research and the science and take some application out of it. So that each week you are starting something new or letting go of something that doesn't serve you. So let me know what that is week by week, and we will go through. I'm here to coach you, guide you, counsel you, do whatever it is. You got me in your corner. So let's get started with nutrition basics, shall we? Yes, we shall. We're going to try to anyway. And we are off to a good start. So here we go. The first thing that we need to go through is we need to remember that nutrition is a science. It's a fairly new science. It's 110 years old, maybe 120 years old, with the first discovery of vitamins about that long ago. And since then, we've discovered many new things. But what is the difference? Like, about, say, nutritional sciences compared to, say, traditional medicine. So in traditional medicine, this is a very gate-kept community. So I think of Eastern medicines, or I think of traditional indigenous medicines, where that food is medicine approach is taken. Now that's very gate capped, and people not in that community, frankly, don't know that much about it based off of maybe some information that they've gathered. And there is a big component of those branches of traditional medicine being sold as wellness. And so it's been capitalized on. Now, I don't have any beef with traditional medicine at all whatsoever. However, I do have beef with pseudoscience. And pseudoscience, very simply defined, is anything that is not scientific, that is presented as scientific in order to sell something. So here are some big indicators between what is science and what is pseudoscience. And there's a lot of misinformation on nutrition that can actually cause more damage. Okay, we've seen things of fad diets causing eating disorders and disordered eating and laying into those. And then you have things like malnourishment now happening because people are doing, all meat diets, or they're not eating fruits and vegetables. Wild, I know, but here we are. So I want you to be able to, as all of my students, be able to filter out the bullshit. Oh, by the way, part of this program is I swear a lot. So if you don't like swearing, then we will talk about that. I'll try to pull it back, but we're all adults here, right? So science in essence always promotes health. There is a rigorous standard of continued measurements that we use. And every time a hypothesis is developed, so that's like an educated guess. Oh, I guess that, say somebody guesses that pop is less healthy than juice. Okay, cool. How are we going to test that? Science is continuously tested. And the way we test is using the null hypothesis. So we take the inverse of that hypothesis. And so in order to test and see, oh, is pop healthier, what did I say, healthier than juice, then I would test and see if juice is healthier than pop. Okay, so you actually have to prove the opposite to nullify it. And that's what we call falsifiability. Okay, so science has falsifiability. Every claim I make has to be, there has to be something proven, something done to try and prove that false. Okay. Now in pseudoscience, a shift away from health is more of a focus on weight. That's an easy red flag to see. Weight is blamed for pretty much everything on the planet in terms of pseudoscience. Okay. Science is moderate and sustainable. Every claim that I make has to be for the majority or incredibly specific, which we'll go into the next point too. So we're talking about things throughout the rest of your life. Nothing that's really drastic here. Pseudoscience is very hyper-focused on quick fixes. Do my 3-day cleanse, do my 6-week detox, do my whatever, lose this much weight, yada, yada. Okay, so these are just, again, these are very quick things that you can notice. Science is inclusive and it is ethical. So what do we mean by ethical? If this was plastered on the front page of the paper, would I be proud? There's ethical question number 1. Ethical question number 2 is if everybody did this, would it be a good thing? If the answer is yes, then that's okay. That's a pass. Ethical also means if I recommend this, how many people would be hurt by this? Okay, so you have to take that into consideration. So when we are inclusive, you're going to notice in scientific studies, it's much more specific. So say, for example, I can't necessarily throw around a term like coffee extends your life. Okay, that's a very it's a very broad statement. Something that is ethically available for me to say would be inclusive of so many people. So say, for example, I'd say adults between the ages of 18 and 25 had a correlation of having a longer lifespan when they drank less than 300 milligrams of caffeine per day. Okay, so that's an ethical statement for me to make. Pseudoscience is exclusive and it's hyper-focused on the individual. So what this means is it's very much on you, the individual. So instead of having a group of, say, age 18 to 24 or different demographics, the socioeconomic status, et cetera, then it would sound something along the lines of if you drink more than 300 milligrams of coffee, you will damage your bones. I don't know, I'm making it up, but there's going to be some sort of paradigm there, or it's put back on you that it's your fault. If you drank coffee, then this happens, right? So it's very exclusive. It is very hyper focused on individual detriment as well as individual focus. So if you do this, then you will have this. And we're going to go into that statement later. Science also uses the research hierarchy, which we're going to get in next, whereas pseudoscience uses anecdotes, testimonials, and claims. So, the research hierarchy will tell you where you got your information from, whereas pseudoscience will say, oh, my clients saw this when they did this. When my clients cut out coffee, they all lost 10 pounds, right? So you have these notions of grandeur. The other thing that pseudoscience really uses, usually within those anecdotes and claims, is a bigger play on emotions. Frankly, it doesn't sound very sexy to say adults between the ages of 18 and 24 saw a 10-year extra lifespan when they consumed less than 300 milligrams of caffeine per day. Doesn't sound as sexy as caffeine lengthens your lifespan. Try my supplements for $29.99. Damn, I want that supplement for $29.99, right? Wrong. Okay, so here's the research hierarchy. So now let's say you run through that quick list and you're like, shit, okay, this person seems to have research attached to it. This person is making a claim based off of weight, but it all seems to make sense. I can't decide if this is science or pseudoscience. Which is it? Hierarchy of research is great to know if you see somebody posting a claim that is not just a testimonial or an anecdote and they use a study. So here's what scientists go through to get our clinical practice guidelines, which of course I'm going to promote at the end of the day. You go to your government websites and check out the clinical practice guidelines and if you're a trainer or a nutritionist, you start there. If you're neither of those things and you are a person who's working with me, go to the clinical practice guidelines when in doubt. They are free. They are there and they went through all this damn research to get there. Okay. So at the bottom of the barrel, this sounds really bad, but it's actually below animal laboratory studies would be anecdotes. Like my Aunt Karen said she lost 60 pounds doing keto. Okay. So below animal and laboratory studies, you have that. The detriment of the animal and laboratory studies is that because they're not involved in humans, it's really difficult to extrapolate. So what we do when we see research in that, we go, oh, interesting. And that's that. Okay, until it works its way up, which takes years and years and years. So we might see something along the lines of, oh, say red wine and resveratrol. So resveratrol being the antioxidant that's found in red wine. Oh, we saw a longer lifespan of lab rats when they consumed X amount of resveratrol. But then you translate that into what that would approximately be in human studies, and you find it's something like 153 bottles of red wine in a day. So you would have to consume 153 bottles of red wine in a day just to get the amount of resveratrol to extend your life. Well, that doesn't make sense. In fact, those studies haven't even been advanced up into case control studies yet because it's interesting data. It's cool. They found this result. The other thing that you're going to know is that in the hierarchy of research, positive studies get published more and they get more attention from the media. It's not as sexy to say, hey, we found no result, which actually happens most of the time in research. It's a lot more enticing to go oh, isn't that interesting? There was a statistical significance in the lifespan of rats when they had this much resveratrol. It's going to get much more attention, but when you extrapolate it into an approximate human amount, it would be unethical to even do that. And this is a common misconception that we see in a lot of pseudoscience in nutrition. They will push a supplement based off of animal and laboratory studies. And while I know they mean their best, it can actually do more damage than good, especially if there's contraindications with medicine, or they avoid taking medicine, or they avoid, eating a healthful diet in hopes that a supplement will work. Okay. So there you go. On to the next one. In case reports or case series, narrative reviews, opinions, or editorials, there's just no design here, right? So if I was to say, hey, I've been in practice for 10 years, here's what I've noticed in my clients, that's cool. That's interesting, but there's no design there. How could you possibly compare apples to oranges? Okay. So again, we go, oh, interesting, but like not too much we can do there. Now, in case control studies and cohort studies, these are observational, but they're non-experimental. So this, I'm sorry, and I should have used a case report as say maybe like one or two of my clients. A case control would have been if I was tracking data over the course of 10 years, say. So you might notice more correlational studies. So in case control or specifically cohorts, you may hear a study that sounds something like, people living in the Mediterranean have longer lifespans. They have the highest rates of omega-3 fatty acids. Okay, so this we're going to continue to keep an eye on because typically they're longitudinal. We are not going to completely discredit these, but they are observational. They're non-experimental, so we can't get too specific yet. You cannot have that inclusiveness that we have in science to say, here's what's best for this group of people. Okay, so sometimes you'll see pseudoscience pull a case control study or pull a cohort study and say, the Mediterranean diet is the best diet to follow for all people. Okay, is that necessarily true? Could anybody be harmed by that? Yeah, people could be harmed by that, right? So it's not quite ethical to say that. So this is where that pseudoscience takes a little extra work to look at. But it is beneficial to know the difference, as well as hearing nutrition headlines in the news. So the last level of evidence, the highest level of evidence, is experimental evidence. And these come in a few different ways. Randomized controlled trials compared two groups. There is a treatment group, there is a control group, and sometimes there are even more levels within that, such as a double-blind study, where not even the researchers know who's in which group. Okay. Then we have meta-analysis and systematic reviews. These take all of the research all up underneath and they say, okay, what trends are we seeing? Or they take all these randomized controlled trials and they go, wow, what direction are we moving in? And almost all of the time in our meta-analyses and our systematic reviews, we see consistency in the data with nutritional sciences, right? For example, fruits and vegetables are nourishing for almost all people. Carbohydrates are still our body's preferred energy source, things like that. And then that's how we develop clinical practice guidelines, which basically looks at, what should a person consume by the end of one day, by the end of 1 week? What do best nutrition practices look like for people to get, say, their RDAs? And that's why those clinical practice guidelines are broken down by demographics. As you can see, it's incredibly inclusive of who we are talking about, and it's very specific. Okay, so that's why all of this yapping that I'm doing is in your best interest to go to the clinical practice guidelines first, because the scientists have already done all the other stuff. You don't need to worry about it. And if you see somebody using one of those level 3, 4, 5 types of level evidence to create a little bit of anxiety and sell you something, or it seems to be too good to be true or ahead of the time, or this isn't in the clinical practice guidelines, it's not in the clinical practice guidelines for a reason. Okay, clinical practice guidelines have stayed pretty much the same for all this amount of time so far. Probably not too much will be budged from there. And that's why you want to go with it. Sound good, everybody? You might be feeling a little whelmed by now already, and that's okay, because this is the last slide we're going to stop at for today. This is the last form of nutrition hierarchy that really needs to be understood before we start to go into more specific things. And the reason I bring the sport and exercise nutrition hierarchy into this is because a lot of us are in the fitness community. You may be working on your own personal fitness goals, you may be working in the fitness industry, or you may just be a fitness enthusiast. No matter, this is the direction we want to take things, especially as our group. If you're a nutritionist or a fitness trainer, bring this to your clients. And if you were a client, this is what I want you to focus on first, all of the time. This is your big takeaway for today. The first thing you need to look at is the energy balance, right? Approximately how many calories does this person need in a day? Where are they getting their calories from? Okay. Are they getting it from food first? We want to look at that area immediately before anything else. And if you don't know what the question, if you don't know what the answer is there, full stop. We need to figure that out first. Okay. After you've determined your approximate energy balance and how many approximate calories you need in a day, then you're going to go to the type of macronutrients. So this is where the quality of foods come in, right? So your energy balance, you should probably know how much protein you're getting. You should probably know how much carbohydrates you're getting, but where are you getting these from? Where are the sources from? Do you know the difference between, or do your clients know the difference between a lean protein? Do they know the difference between saturated fats and monounsaturated fats? Do they know the difference between slow digesting carbohydrates? Are they getting enough fiber? All right. So this is where the fuel sources really kick it up a notch. And you're just by doing those 2 levels right there, you or your clients are going to see huge results just from that alone. The next thing is the periodization. So this is like your nutrient timing. Is there a better time of day to eat some things than others? Now, when you're first getting started, I always recommend just focusing on 3 plates at a time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because that's the easiest way to conceptualize, and not to worry too much about the time of day you're eating them. All right. Is there some research showing that consuming protein late at night can help for people who are sleep deprived? Yeah, absolutely. But have you focused on those first 2 things first? Definitely go to the energy balance and then the type of macronutrients first. Usually the micronutrient balance will fall if you're getting high quality macronutrients. Then focus on the timing, and last, at very least, if you're not getting enough of something, then we start to look at supplements. Okay. So evidence-based science says, and you guys should be reminding your clients or reminding yourself as well, bottom up, right? We are going from the bottom up. That is the way to go. What we often see in pseudoscience is top down, promoting supplements, a magical time of day you should be eating things. Start your morning off with this, yada, yada. Then talking about the different types of macronutrients. Oh, don't eat this, don't eat that, which often you hear a lot of, and rarely do even hear the overall calorie thing. In fact, a lot of the times it's discredited. Calories don't matter, count chemicals or things like that. So the one thing you can notice too, if you're trying to, if you're a client and you're trying to find somebody to work with, see if they start to do, if you hear more about the bottom up, if you hear more about energy balance, more about macronutrients, a little bit about periodization, and very little about different types of supplements, you're probably on the right track for finding an evidence-based coach. If you are a coach who's promoting their services and you want to see an increase in the value of your clients and quality clients who are going to see results, be talking about the most important things most of the time. Don't spend as much time talking about the supplements, because if your clients keep taking supplements, they're not going to see results. And if your clients don't see results, you're not going to get a referral out of them. If you don't get a referral out of them, how are you going to keep your business alive? Pseudoscience and people who promote pseudoscience, they usually do this, right? You need to keep your business slow and steady as time goes on, and make a living, not just crash and burn, because somebody will call you out for your bullshit sooner or later, and you will be busted and people will be unhappy and you will ruin your reputation. And we do not want that. Okay. So we're going to break here before we go a little bit more into, let me show you some of the slides ahead here. We're going to start going into basic concepts and getting a little bit more advanced into how to falsify a claim, and water, micronutrients, all that fun stuff. Okay. So let's stop share right here. Now, we should be booked out one-on-one for our sessions. If you're watching this recording, if you're watching this recording for some other reason you don't have sessions, then shoot me a message if you have any questions. Otherwise, we're going to break for today and we will pick up next week with the remainder of Nutrition 101. So major takeaways for today. What is the difference? Can you describe to somebody some of the major red flags between pseudoscience and nutritional sciences? Do you understand the hierarchy of nutrition, even just a little bit here and there, or even just understanding that there is a hierarchy of nutrition, and animal laboratory studies are at the bottom, and your randomized control trials, meta-analysis, and systematic reviews are at the top? And do you understand that we focus on our energy needs first, macros, nutrient timing, and supplements very little? Okay. Those are the 3 main takeaways for today. Welcome to the class. I'm happy to get you started, and I will see you all next week. Cheers, guys. Have a good night. Bye-bye.